Greetings from Portimao. We are here in the south of Portugal in a very, very sunny Autódromo do Algarve, ready for this second event of the 2025 EUROCUP-3 season. And even though this may just be the second event of the season, of the calendar, we are already thinking of the future. So this weekend we took the chance to talk to MP Motorsport team principal Sander Dorsman to rate the past a little bit, to think, to reminisce of the past EuroCup-3 seasons, and of course to think of what's coming next, of what's coming in the future, because there are some interesting changes for next season in EuroCup-3. So we talked to one of the men who knows the most about this series in the paddock. So thank you very much for spending some time with us. You've been here as a team since the first year of EuroCup-3, and you've seen the championship grow from the very first year until now on this third season, so it's a nice growth, and surely as one of the main stars of the show, you've been in a privileged position to see it grow. How's been that first cycle of the EuroCup-3?
Yeah, for us, the EuroCup has been a fantastic championship so far. We've been here since the beginning, and since then the championship grew quite a bit. I remember the first races, we had like 17, 18 cars on the grid, and here we are in Portimao with 30 cars, so I think it's a very nice benchmark that we reached here. And I think the quality of the championship that it offers to the drivers is unique, both quality-wise and cost-effectiveness of it. So yeah, we are happy to be here. It's a very challenging, but also very, competitive championship. So we believe this championship teaches the drivers very well for the next step, which then normally should be FIA F3.
And you've seen that that growth, which has been obviously very good. What do you think is the key? What makes this championship good from an operative point of view, also from the teams?
Yeah, in our opinion, this championship it's very a competitive one, but also it's very important that let's say in the DNA of this championship is also very the cost effectiveness, and that's the combination of things. I think this makes this championship EuroCup-3 very attractive, both for teams and drivers. We have a lot of mileage on the track, a lot of testing combined with racing events, the winter championship, etc. So all the drivers and teams are very busy during the season, which is very important for young drivers to have a lot of mileage, learn a lot of tracks, just to prepare them well for the next step.
And your team or teams have been, as I was saying, part of the big stars of the show, because you've always been there fighting for that. So clearly you've been in a position to enjoy the success in the championship. How's fighting at the top feeling for you?
Yeah, for us, of course, our objective is always to win. But unfortunately, we are not the only one with that objective on this paddock. But it makes it nice. It's in the end, you want competition, and that's what this championship has to offer. So we have fantastic fights, and you can see this year, for example, many teams are there fighting for the win and for a podium position. And that's what you also want as a driver, and as a team, to be in a very competitive environment. And I think that's exactly what EuroCup-3 is offering us at this moment.
And also there's Formula 4 Spanish Championship, which is of course in the same family, so they share a lot of the race weekends, and that makes it, I suppose, operatively quite comfortable to make, but also for the drivers it's very attractive because it's a natural stepping stone from F4.
Yes, exactly. The good thing now in this situation where we have, like here in Portimao, both F4 and EuroCup on the same paddocks, for us as team, it's of course fantastic because operational side is much more easy. But also I think for the driver's point of view, like drivers in Formula 4, they can already see how it is to be in the EuroCup-3 situation. They can watch the races and already be a bit part of that EuroCup-3 family. So I think that combination of things works really well for everybody. So we are very happy with that.
And of course, although we cannot yet say what are the exact changes for next year, there are going to be some changes to the championship next year, which I think are quite attractive, will be attractive for the drivers, for the teams, for the fans as well. So without saying too much, but how do you feel about these changes?
I think the last couple of years, EuroCup-3 evolved quite heavily, actually. This is only the third year of the championship, and look where it stands now, which is very well done to the promoter and the organizers and the teams of these championships. But I think, like you said, obviously this is the last year of this generation regional car. And okay, I think the things to come are very exciting. I think I'm not allowed to say too much here yet, but we are very enthusiastic about it, and I think there are very nice things to come to make this championship even better in the future years to come.
And what do you expect to see from EuroCup-3 in the next cycle? Let's say this was the first cycle, so second cycle.
I think for the next cycle, I think the good thing, or hopefully the racing will be even better than it already is, which is already great at this moment. But I think it would be nice to be even closer to F3 to prepare the drivers even better. And I think perhaps the new car, or I think it will be much closer to F3. And that probably in combination with a good calendar that is also a bit closer towards F3, I think that would be amazing.
Hey guys, welcome back to the action once again in the 2025 EuroCup-3 motor racing season. We had a fantastic season opener at the Red Bull Ring in Austria, where Mattia Kolnagi, the reigning Spanish F4 champion, and his big rival for this season, Maciej Gladisz of Poland, took a win apiece from the fantastic battles that we had last time out. Now we've switched across to the Algarve. We're on the Autodromo Algarve in Portimao, and this circuit has such a different complexion to it compared to what we had at the Red Bull Ring. Yes, there's elevation change. Yes, there's camber switches, but that was a short and sweet circuit with plenty of decent overtaking opportunities. Now it's the roller coaster that takes center stage here for the second round of the championship. And because Mattia Kolnagi was the strongest of the competitors in the first round of the championship in terms of points scored, he is now the one that carries the advantage going into this second weekend of the championship. But after the pace that we saw from the Polish driver Maciej Gladisz, expect him to be right up at the sharp end, trying to steal back some of the points that went awry in the first of the two races over the opening weekend. There's plenty to discuss in terms of how the championship is going to continue to evolve. A lot of drivers recently have been messaging me and talking to me about the future prospects for EuroCup-3, and we heard a little bit about that earlier on in the beginning of the broadcast. The new EuroCup-3 potential for 2026 is already a big talking point amongst teams and drivers. Quite a few youngsters are trying to look at EuroCup-3 for next season as a big potential market for them to go racing in the 2026 campaign. And that all depends on the second iteration, as we mentioned before. Alex Garcia was reiterating there with our interviewee from MP Motorsport about the future prospects, about where the championship is going to go. And there's definitely big talking points about that. But this calendar in 2025 is going to take us to a lot of fantastic race circuits before we even start thinking about the second iteration of EuroCup-3. This championship year, we should see some really good battles. For me, so far, it looks as though it's going to be Kolnagi versus Gladisz in terms of the championship fight. But that doesn't mean there aren't going to be a few more protagonists that will throw their hat into the ring. We've obviously got some good battles coming up in prospect. The qualifying sessions and the practice sessions have told us already a little bit about the flavour of where things are going to go for us over the course of the weekend. Alex Garcia is trackside. He can give us a little bit more of an information as to how things are going in the gorgeous Portuguese sunshine. Alex, good to see you, my friend. What's the latest talk of the town?
Hi Jake, great to see you again, great to hear you again. And yes, it is definitely very, very sunny in here. And I think we're going to, I want to say enjoy, we will for sure enjoy the drives. I think we will suffer a little bit more with the heat this weekend. because the temperatures are super, super high, and tomorrow we're expecting a little bit more heat even. You've seen the qualifying and free practice sessions. They have been extremely close. Differences are very, very tight, and there is one clear element that I think is the key differentiator from Red Bull Ring to Portimao this weekend, which is Campos Racing and Griffin Core, of course, as part of Campos, are performing exceedingly well. They're doing very, very well. We have a top 6 with the Campos Racing guys, and top 5 out of 6, and we have 6 drivers in the top 7. So we have plenty of Campos at the top, and MP Motorsport will have to fight hard to push back against this dominance. So let's see if they can do that in race 1. I would normally say let's see if they can do that in race 2 tomorrow, but don't forget, we have a sprint race later today, so there's a little bit of more of action this weekend.
Identity for pole position in race 1 of the first round of the championship at the Red Bull Ring. It was the Red Bull youngster, I should say, Gasper Stuka, who threw the biggest opportunity towards Mattia Colnaghi out of the blocks. Put it on pole position alongside Jesse Cadascato with Ernesto Rivera, Enzo Tavanichkil and Gilles Carrera boys chasing the pack. Colnaghi down in 6th, Gladish even further back in 13th. It looks like the form could be completely different here this weekend.
Yes, exactly. I think we see enough differences, as we discussed in the Red Bull Ring. We see enough differences that we can say, well, let's see what this weekend brings, because we know that Mattia Colnaghi, of course, and Maciej Gladish are the theoretical favorites for the championship. We saw them duking it out in the Spanish Winter Championship here in EUROCUP-3, including here in Portimao. But of course, this doesn't mean that they're the only ones who could do it. And as I always like to say, we should wait probably a couple more rounds before we can really say who are the actual championship contenders. I am very impressed with Kasper Stuka. He did very well in the Red Bull Ring, and he has done very well so far here, and I would not discard him at all. So I think all the Polish fans may have not one reason to be interested in EUROCUP-3, but maybe 2 reasons actually. So, as one would say, we could be talking about a pole on pole for this race 1 here in Portimao. But of course, as we were mentioning right now with Jake Sanson, our commentator, for this race 1 here in Portimao, we have plenty of candidates for this first event of the weekend. And we will be looking at that, but we will have many Campos Racing cars at the top of the grid, and that will be therefore an intra-team story, an intra-team battle that they will have to manage. And as you know, these battles are not only managed on track, they will have to be managed from the pit wall as well. So Jake, I think that is going to be a challenge from the pit wall to be able to manage all these drivers from the same squads and keeping them calm and collected and with cold blood, which I think today with these temperatures is going to be rather tricky.
Yeah, this circuit does have a bit of a reputation for being tough on tyres and tough on drivers, especially in terms of concentration. They call this place the roller coaster. There's a lot of peaks and troughs, a lot of elevation changes, a lot of sweeps and camber. But the big element here that we've talked about time and time again in EUROCUP-3, Alex, is tyre degradation. With the elevated temperatures from the Red Bull Ring, this race essentially, I guess now, for the 30 minutes plus 1 lap, is going to be about who can look after their set of boots the best.
Yeah, and actually, I was talking to some of the teams, and they were mentioning, you know, for many of the drivers, this will also apply to Formula 4, but in this case for EUROCUP-3, these drivers have not really driven these cars with these boots on hot temperatures. So for the rookies specifically, this is a new experience. It was not as hot in the Red Bull Ring, of course, and it was definitely not as hot in the Spanish Winter Championship. So it is a new experience, so it will be a little bit of fine-tuning of whatever settings they have in the car, and their own driving. They will have to manage those tires and see that they make them last until the end of the race, but without protecting them too much, because you have performance to lose if you do that.
Now, I'm a little surprised that we didn't see the likes of Valerio Rinicella or Alexander Abkasava, who was our race winner in EUROCUP-3 last year, further up the order. It's really telling, isn't it, for these drivers who have been here for a second season. You have got to make advantage of the opportunities when you're in your second season. You can't afford get under your skin. And when you've got the likes of Valerio Rinicella, Alex Abkasava, Tero Jensen, Emma of not scoring in the top 6 in terms of qualifying, that ramps up the pressure. The rookies are trying to take this championship by storm, and there's a few candidates who will be looking this with some big sweat over their eyebrows.
I've been mentioning this since the Spanish won the championship, that we have an amazing new crop of rookies this year, and they are proving themselves, because in every session pretty much they are making things difficult for the second-year drivers. Even then, I would not discount them. You were talking about Valerio Rinicella. Remember that he is the record holder here in Portimao for the Formula Regional machines, so in this case for the FRECA or the EUROCUP-3 cars. So he is definitely quick in here, and he knows what it takes to protect the tires here. So he could be one to look out for in the race if the MP Motorsport machines are quick on race pace, which we do not know yet. We know that they are fairly close in general. We also know that the Campos cars have a little bit more peak speed in over one lap, but in the race things could change, and we know that Portimao is a good place to fight, to overtake. So if those MP Motorsport cars are quick in a race stream, they might have something to say. But as we always like to say, we have to let the race develop. We need to see what goes on and see where these drivers take us on this trip, because definitely a roller coaster, I think that's an understatement.
So right, I mean, these cars just making their way to the starting grid. The thing I want to talk about with this front row, the starting grid, Alex, is it's really important for these two guys to keep their heads above water compared to the rookies. You've got Kasper Stuka, who really put on a great show in the first of the 2 races. For him to be pole position, that really tells him, look, we have got the ability to win this championship. We can get these rookies done. We do have that pace. We just need to keep the consistency, and that's going to be an important one for him. With Jesse Carrasquedo second on the grid after the disaster of the Red Bull Ring, to bounce back to P2 on the grid is exactly what the Mexican needed. And perhaps, Alex, I wonder if that's in part to the confidence boost that seeing him get on the FIA F3 grid as a substitute has brought him.
That is exactly what I was going to talk to you about, because I was talking to him in Barcelona, and he was pretty happy about that opportunity. Of course, he knew that it had come very last minute, so as you know, drivers like to be very prepared, and he did not have the time to prepare properly. But there's always a saying between drivers: when you step up to the next category, to the next class, you always learn something that you can apply when you go back to your usual class. So this is, you know this very well, this already happens in karting. When a national championship driver steps up to the world championship and he comes back to his old peers, he's always very quick, he's always a little bit more experienced. So that is something that he will for sure take back from his visit to the FIA F3. But hey, there's plenty of drivers who, as you said, need to make sure that defend themselves from the rookies, especially because we know how these youngsters are. If the rookie drivers get overconfident, it's tricky to stop. You need to stop that momentum that they are carrying over the first round, after especially the Winter Series as well, the Winter Championship. So Kasper Stuka and Jesse Carrasquedo might be thinking, well, it's time to put our boots to good use and kick a few behinds.
Now, there's one particular factor going into this race that we should also touch on before we get going. The 3 Red Bull youngsters, Rivera, Time Vanichkel, Coranta. Not much to choose between them at all in terms of practice pace or qualifying pace. 3rd, 4th and 5th on the grid. We saw them get a little bit racy with each other at the Red Bull Ring. How important do you think, psychologically, Alex, it's going to be for each of those Red Bull drivers to prove that they are the top banana? They want to be the one that can carry the momentum through the 2025 season. It must be a big weight of expectation on their shoulders.
It is crucial. We know the pressure in the Red Bull stable is always very high. Drivers themselves don't like to talk too much about it, but they know it. The pressure is big, the expectations are lofty, and they have to prove themselves every time. We were watching behind me Mattia Colnaghi, who is starting from 6th on the grid, and all the cars in front of him are from the Campos stable, so that is how much he will have to fight back. He will have some of the Red Bull drivers ahead of him, but as you were saying, big pressure for them. I also think that they are all performing quite well, so I don't think that there's much reason to worry per se, but you know that. Every driver likes to beat their teammates, and when your teammate is from the same junior program as you are, there's twice as much reason to beat them. So friends, enemies, frenemies, you decide, but I think the relationship is pretty clear.
I mean, it's also doubly difficult as well because in a lot of these single-seater championships in the feeder series formulas, you've got multiple drivers in the Red Bull Academy, for example, but they've not been in the same team. Now, this year, with Red Bull and Campos joining forces, that is magnified more than it has ever been to have the youngsters from the same academy, but also in the same team. Goodness me, I would not want to be a fly on the wall when things go pear-shaped.
I think I would, but because I'm a very curious person and I would always like to know what's going on there, but my God, they have to have some funny, interesting situations in there because tensions are going to run high. And you know, I've talked to some of the drivers and they say, look, when we're on the track, we don't necessarily think about the names. Outside of the track, we need to get along. Some of us are friends. But can you really be friends with someone who's potentially taking away your dream? I'm not sure. I'm really not sure.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating. The grid is being cleared. Final predictions then, Alex. Who do you think your money's on for this one? Is Stucker going to have an easy run of it? Can Kadashkeda get under his skin? Is one of the rookies going to come forward? What do you think?
I wouldn't say easy would be a word that I would use in any race in EuroCup 3. But yes, I think Kasper Stuka is looking very good. So if I had to bet a chickpea, for example, I would bet it for him.
Okay, sounds like a very good call. The lights are going to go to green and they will go around for their formation lap. Gracias, Alex. We will come back to you mid-race if we need to, if there are shenanigans in the pits. For the moment, though, the drivers are about to be sent on their formation lap. 30 minutes plus 1 lap, round 2 of the 2025 EuroCup 3 Championship category. And there are 3 races, of course, this weekend in EuroCup 3, as opposed to the regular 2-race weekend. There is a shorter race this afternoon as well as just now. Off we go. Kasper Stucker leads Jesse Kadashkeda out of the grid, and they will go around for a formation lap. So it is going to be fascinating to see which of the drivers is going to make the first even spread. But I've got a sensation that the Red Bull Juniors are going to get feisty in this one. 3rd, 4th and 5th on the grid, all of them within a stone's throw of a victory. They'll all want to take it. Mattia Kolnagi in 6th position, not where he wanted to start, but he could still pick up some pieces from there, so he's got to stay hungry and in the game. Could be fascinating to see how it all continues to progress from his perspective, but there's a lot that can still change hands as they work their way forward. Ernesto de Vera, Enzo Tarvanichkil and Gilles Caranta squabbling amongst the Campos drivers to be the next best, and it will be fascinating to see who gets the full advantage of it. Won't be easy to make a prediction, that is for sure. Kasper Stucker and Jesse Kadashkeda, front row of the starting grid, Ernesto de Vera and Enzo Tarvanichkil on the 2nd row, then Gilles Caranta and Mattia Kolnagi, championship leader, P6, Francisco Macedo and Andres Cardenas, 8th on the grid from Valerio Vinicella, and then it is Abkasava, and it's a big opportunity for him to let it slip in 10th position. He needs to use this opportunity to work his way back forward. Garrett Berry and James Igotzi, the 2 Americans. Maciej Gladish way back in 13th again, but at least it's not as bad as race 1 at the Red Bull Ring. Theodor Jensen is alongside him on the grid, then Yannis Stephen Haydens, along with Luciano Morano. Kai Daryanani is alongside Emo Fittipaldi Jr. Then we have Oscar Wirtz alongside Preston Lambert. Lorenzo Castillo is alongside Christian Cantu. Then we have Edu Robinson alongside Alexandro Famolaro, Zach Skula and Lenny Reed from Isaac Barashi and Alsufel Manito. And then Emil and Linus Hellberg round out the 30-car grid. It is growing all the time, EuroCup 3. Phenomenal size of grid for this weekend. Great to see so many drivers getting their way into the starting grid now. But this is going to be a busy one. And with a busy grid comes potential for disaster. All of these spectators, many of whom, of course, are family members, as well as sponsors and supporters. There's a lot of pressure on these young shoulders as they work their way around the course, and they will make their way to the back of the grid. Last year saw that fantastic race battle that saw Mr. Abkasava get himself into a fantastic position and go through with a great victory, but that doesn't mean he can take it again. He's got to work very carefully to make sure it all comes his way. Never easy to put yourself in a good position from the outset, but then everybody will be wanting to make it work on a very even keel for this first race of the weekend. 30 minutes plus 1 lap, and we're going to see a really interesting challenge from all of the contenders from the outset. Kasper Stucker wanting to transform into another podium finish at the very minimum, but victory has got to be where his focus is. It'll be very tricky to finish the job, of course, but he knows exactly how much is on this one. To the grid goes the number 12. That is Abkasava for the MP Motorsport team. That is the KCL satellite team he's part of, but still in the MP orange car colours. Front row of the grid for Jesse Carrasquedo in the Griffin Core. Teammates, of course, with Francisco Macedo. So it'll be fascinating to see if they can make a full benefit off the start. Not going to be easy to predict where this race is going. So much rests on the calm, composed nature of the drivers on the run down to turn one. They all want to make good use of the opportunity afforded them. The Hellbergs put themselves on the back row of the grid, and when the green flag flies at the back, we'll be ready for the lights to come on. All 30 cars in position on the starting grid for the first of our races this weekend. Round 2, race 1 at Portimao. The green flag flies. When the lights go out, we're racing now! And it's a cracking start from the front of the grid for Carrasquedo. He's going to try and draw level with Stuka. The Red Bull Campos are already 3 abreast nearly into turn 1, and one of them's going to have to concede. They go into turn 1 carefully and casually as the rest of the field swarms through, trying not to get into anybody's blind spots. And it looks like 24, Ernesto Rivera, is the leading Red Bull Campos car through into turn 3 for the first time as they work their way up the hill. All of the cars trying to stay in the mix, and they have done so. No dust kicked up over the crest, and it's a perfect start for Stuka in front of Carrasquedo and Rivera. Then Tarvanichkil, Garanta, Macedo, Kolnagi, Andres Cardenas in front of Rinicella, and Gladish, who's already made up 3 places. There he goes on the inside line, and that's a very bold maneuver from Maciej Gladish to put himself right into the vanguard of the battle. Yellow flags flying around the course further back. So it looks as though we've had somebody go off at the hairpin at turn 4. Run wide there for one of the MPs. I think that might have been Abkasava. So already there's some big issues around the course as everybody's trying to work their way forward. And we're going to say, oh, it's the 12, it's Abkasava. That's exactly what he didn't need. Safety car is called. Well, Abkasava out of the race then. In the first race of the weekend, I did say that the pressure was going to be high on him to get a decent result up against all these rookies. And I'm afraid Abkasava has let it all go away from him. Well, that is devastating bad luck indeed then for the Kazakhstani. What a shame. So Abkasava climbs out of the car, and the safety car is called instantly. So Kasper Stuka in front of Jesse Carrasquedo, then Rivera, Tarvanichkil and Caranta. If we get a replay, we will of course show it. But certainly for the time being, it's exactly the worst nightmare for the MP Motorsport driver from Kazakhstan. Abkasava, who was a race winner last year. Oh dear, that is not what you need, is it? Terrible bad luck and misfortune for his start to the weekend. He was really hoping for a little bit more than that, but I'm afraid it's not going to be the case for the youngster on this occasion. He needed a bit more luck than that, I'm afraid. So, as a result, he's now got to watch as the rest of the field works its way through. But Alexander Abkasava is out of the race. Alex Garcia is down in pit lane. What can you tell us?
Well, Jake, we are in front of the MP Motorsport garage, and of course there is a big disappointment. We are seeing some other cars getting into the pit lane after that tussle in the first lap. But it is very unfortunate for Alexander Abkasava, especially considering, if you remember, that last year he was the driver to win here in Portimao after that spectacular ending where the push to pass was crucial in that very celebrated first win. Unfortunate start for the weekend for him, but definitely this is one of the things that we know that can happen in Portimao, especially on those first laps, which are usually pretty intense.
We've got big damage as well to the Santalocks of Garrett Berry and Theodor Jensen, both of them coming into the pits then. So it's a very tricky opening lap here, as we know, at Portimao, and it's certainly not been made any easier by 30 cars being in the grid for this one. Jensen's car sat in the pits, Garrett Berry going out again to rejoin the field. But yeah, Portimao with 30 cars on it is significantly more challenging than when there's 20.
Full grid, exactly. So it is, of course, very good for the championship, but it's also a challenge, especially in those midfield areas where it's always a lot more packed. There's a lot more cars in very, very little space, and we know this is always a risk. But I speak of many cars in very little space. Today, that could be applied to the first corner with the first rows of the grid, because my word, what those Red Bulls were doing in those first meters. I'm honestly shocked and also fascinated by how they avoided any clash between them.
Yeah, they certainly weren't waiting around to get the drama off, were they? 3 wide into turn 1. Interestingly, though, Rivera, the only one brave enough, really, to throw caution to the winds in turn 1. Both Enzo and Jules looked like they backed out of it quite considerably. Maciej Gladic getting up to 10th position. That's a great start for him. But the rookies, yet again, Alex, are the ones who have come through this better. Berry, Jensen and Abkasava, 3 big names with experience in this category. They've all come off worse, and the rookies have survived.
Exactly. For some reason, and we know that the reason is that the rookies are pushing hard and are doing a great job, but for some reason, when there's some lack of fortune, so to speak, it seems to always be with those second-year drivers or more experienced drivers, which basically proves that the rookies are pushing them against the wall, and the second years are having to take more risks. They are having to throw caution to the wind, maybe in some moments where they would normally not do it. And when these things start to pile up, it's what we were talking before the start of the race. The momentum starts getting bigger and bigger, and this may help some of these rookies that are performing so well. So, well, let's see if those who are still ahead in the race, they manage to stay ahead in the race, because we have quite a few rookies pushing hard. I want to see how far Maciej Gladic can get, because that first lap was honestly pretty impressive.
Yeah, and he's straight into the points with that one. Another man to watch for in this restart is going to be Valerio Rinicella, 8th position, the only other driver other than Stuka and Carrasquedo with a year's experience of this car underneath them. Will he have even a candle to hold to the likes of Colnaghi and Macedo, given the strong form that they've got?
I think he could. We know that he's fast. He won here in the Spanish Winter Championship. He, of course, I mentioned that before, he has the track record by virtue of that pole position he took a few months ago. And honestly, when I talked to him this weekend, he seemed pretty chill, pretty relaxed, which is usually a sign that things are going well, even if qualifying was not as good as he would have liked. So he could have something to say in the race if, again, the car is quick in race trim. It seems to be, Gladic has proven that the MPs are going fast, so I'm looking forward to that, because we know Valerio is a hard charger, and if they let him any single bit of space, any bit of track, he'll take it.
He certainly will. Safety car is coming in this lap. Thanks, Alex. We'll get back to you if we need you. Thank you very much. So back into the action. The drivers are going on the formation lap. It'll be a tricky one on this restart. Rivera is really close to Carrasquedo, ready to pounce. Stuka has backed up the field, and we should be ready to go as soon as he is going to give us the call to do so. But look, he really is concertinaing this field up. It's all going to depend on when Stuka drops the hammer. Surely it'll be on the descent down this part of the course. He's going to have to drop the hammer fairly dramatically. He really is backing them up. He wants this to be one of the more exciting of restarts that we've had. We're already 2/3 of the way around the corner before he's gone for it. He's trying to keep Carrasquedo guessing. This is one of the longest restarts. Now he's gone for it as he gets onto the power, and that's given him no advantage at all like he wanted. And Rivera's gone with them. It's green, 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 green here at Portimao, but that is not the restart Stuttgart would have wanted. Carrasquedo and Rivera are going to be all over him, and now Calanta's going to get on the inside of Tomanichko. 3 into 1, and it could be a great chance on the inside. Into second place goes Rivera. The Mexicans come through, and now Tomanichko and Caranta are already all over Carrasquedo. Brilliant stuff. 2 Red Bull Campos have come through. Make that 3 round the outside as they sweep ahead of Carrasquedo. It's gone terribly wrong for the Mexican as Rivera, Tomanichko and Caranta have all swept through. Even though it's Carrasquedo in the lead, he got ahead of Stuka. So Stuka is all the way back into 5th position. Disaster for Stuka. I thought it was Carrasquedo that dropped back. It's not, it's Stuka. That's the worst possible restart that the Polish driver could have asked for, as Carrasquedo leads Rivera, Tomanichko, Caranta, Stuka, and then Colnaghi ahead of Macedo, Cardenas and Rinicella. But that is the most nightmare of nightmare scenarios for Kasper Stuka. He left it too long, he left it too late. The others were able to make the pounce on him. And it's an embarrassing end to Kasper Stuka's short stint in the lead of this race as Carrasquedo sweeps through. And now there's even more drama as here come the MPs. Colnaghi and Macedo battling away with Cardenas. So Colnaghi still trying to hold his nerve there as they run through. P6 for him as he tries to close in on Kasper Stuka. That's going to give Mattia Kolnagi plenty of confidence now that he's got Stuka right in front of him. Maciej Gladish lost a place on the restart, by the way. James Igotzi has now got ahead of him, the young man from Hollywood in Florida. So excellent run as they work their way through. I'm well aware of the fact, of course, that Hollywood is in California, but there is also a Hollywood in Florida. That's the one that James Igotzi actually comes from. Side by side, Rinicella and Macedo down to the first corner, and there's already a couple of drivers trying to make a move or two. James Igotzi is on the move on the inside line, and he's there. The Palou driver getting his move. Excellently done. So James Igotzi making up another place as he makes the bid this time on Francisco Macedo, and Rinicella's got ahead of Cardenas as well. So Rinicella, Cardenas, Igotzi, Macedo, Darianani, and Maciej Gladish, who's down to 12th position now. So he was making big inroads at the start. Now, Maciej Gladish is actually losing positions. I wonder if he's got an issue with the car or if these tyres are just not switching on at the right pace. So big problems already for several drivers in this field. Stuka getting the nightmare of nightmare restarts, and the other pole, Maciej Gladish, slipping out of 10th place, down to 12th, out of the points. So there's a lot of big dramas in this one already. Everybody else just trying to stay out of harm's way on the opening lap. That looks like Emil Hellberg all the way up to 20th from what was 29th on the starting grid. I know there's only 28 cars left in it now, but that's still good reactions from Hellberg to stay out of harm's way. You've got to be careful when you drift over the curbs on that high peak of the circuit, because that's when the car can really get spat out. You've got to keep a decent focus on the way up through this final section of the course. It's very uphill and down dale, and then you drop through this right-hand hairpin radius. That's actually quite a big descent on the way down. Then you go through this last turn. Again, look at the change in elevation. Down on the descent and then straight back up the crest on the straight. So Carrasquedo, Mexico leads Mexico. Carrasquedo in front of his countryman Ernesto Rivera. Then Enzo Tarvanitschgul. Looks like two Red Bull Juniors are going to be on the podium here, and that's great news for the tie, Enzo Tarvanitschgul. So out through the far side of the course, Carrasquedo leading the way, having got the jump on his teammate on the restart. Fantastic work. Rivera, Tarvanitschgul, Caranta, and then Kasper Stuka, who must be absolutely seething that he started this race at the front on the restart and is now down to P5. So Rivera is trying to follow in the footsteps then of Jesse Carrasquedo, just trying to take his time for the moment. It is Carrasquedo who has the fastest lap, a 1:41.207, of course, because this is the second green flag lap of the race thus far. We didn't have a single safety car period during the first weekend of EuroCup-3. Now in the second, we already have our first, and that is disaster in the pits for Zach Skula. Well, Zach Skula, the Palou Motorsport team, there's two of them in the pits. It's Isaac Barashi as well. So the Palou Motorsport team are having to double stack repair here for Zach Skula and Isaac Barashi. That is about as miserable a race as it gets for that team. They've only got four cars in the race, the other two being Luciano Morano in P16 and James Igotzi in P9. So half the team are currently sat in pit lane. Very bad news indeed from their point of view. Carrasquedo now trying to step up his attack and pull away from Ernesto Rivera. Then Enzo Tarvanitschgul, P3. Gilles Caranta, the Frenchman from Saint-Tropez, 4th position in front of Kasper Stuka. And then Mattia Kolnagi, Valerio Rinicella, Andres Cardenas, James Igotzi, and Francisco Macedo in the points. Outside the points, we've got Darianani, Gladish, Stephen Hayden's doing well for GRS, then Preston Lambert, Lorenzo Castillo, Luciano Morano, Emo Fittipaldi Jr., Lenny Reeds, Christian Cantu, and then Oscar Wirtz now ahead of Edu Robinson, making his debut for DXR, having stepped up from the F4 Spanish Championship. So the drivers work their way over the crest. Rivera is relatively even in terms of pace at the moment, but certainly not spectacular, and certainly not enough for Carrasquedo to be breaking a sweat for the time being either. So Caranta's doing a fair job in 4th place. Actually, all three of the Red Bull Campos cars doing a sensational job at the moment. Easy to distinguish the Campos Racing drivers because all three of their cars are in Red Bull livery. The more traditional Campos colours can be found on the Griffin Core cars. So Jessica Carrasquedo in the lead, Kasper Stuka in 5th place, and then of course Francisco Macedo in his Griffin Core car as well. So the two different teams, essentially part of the same stable, but there's a regulation that means that no one team is allowed to run more than 4 drivers. So the teams have been able to find a loophole to get around this by having a second team entry. A couple of teams do this. MP does it with their KCL satellite operation being their second. Campos Racing obviously does it now with the Griffin Core brand to make sure they have 2 different teams. It's something that started life in F4 and then it's kind of expanded into the other forms of single-seater, including EUROCUP-3. So Gadiscado, 15.5 minutes to go. I can't believe half the race has gone already. Quite a significant portion of that was spent behind the safety car, of course. But Gadiscado, Rivera, Tarvanichkul, that's your podium at the moment. But Rivera needs to figure out a way of closing up on Jesse Gadiscado. That's not going to be easy to achieve. Stucker's trying to get back on terms with Gilles Caranta. That will be doubly frustrating for Stucker. Not only did he lose the lead of the race on the restart to his teammate Gadiscado, but he also saw 1, 2, all 3 of the Red Bull Juniors, an academy that he used to be part of, don't forget, sweeping past him on the way through turn 1. That's going to be a real headache psychologically for Stucker. So there is Ernesto Rivera, still trying to stay as close to Gadiscado as possible. Ernesto Rivera is really putting on a good show here. A lot of column inches have been written about the 3 young Red Bulls in EuroCup-3 this year. Ernesto Rivera, an F4 Spanish Championship race winner last season. The Thai Enzo Tarvanichkul, former junior karting champion of the world, the first ever Asian driver to do so, by the way. Alex Albon won an FIA World Cup in karting back in the day, but not a World Championship. Enzo Tarvanichkul, of course, has become a junior world champion. And then Gilles Caranta, the Frenchman, who's been stepping his way largely through the karting campaigns, was superb in the AMI categories, and then, of course, made his way over to the European Championships and the World Championships as well. And the youngster from Saint-Tropez, really very impressive to watch, as he is now part of the Red Bull Junior fold as well. And he's ahead of the man who used to be part of the Red Bull Junior fold, Kasper Stucker, who has dropped to P5. This was not in the script for the pole. Galnagi P7, not a bad race from Rinicella so far, putting the championship leader under some pressure, Mattia Galnagi. F4 Spanish champion last year, wanting to become EuroCup-3 champion this year. Maciej Gladish, his big rival for the championship, has not lost too many points, by the way. 12th position is where he currently resides. So still plenty to discuss and still plenty for these drivers to stay motivated about. But certainly at the moment, Jesse Gadiscado has all the cards up his sleeve. Look at Stucker, really hustling Caranta as he works his way further forward now. You do get the sense that Stucker is going to try and squeeze his way through here. Bit of push to pass at the right part of the course is going to be exactly what Kasper Stucker needs to move his way into 4th position, but he's got to be so careful how he does it. Gadiscado leads Rivera, Tarvanichkul, and then these two, Caranta and Stucker, battling and dueling over 4th position ahead of the championship leader, Mattia Galnagi, in 6th position. So still plenty of dueling to come in this one. Fascinating how at the Red Bull Ring, it was pretty much all one-way traffic for the MP squad. This time out, Griffin Core and Campos, they got it right. What did the MP team do to get back into this? Because Rinicella is P7, Cardenas is P8, and then all the way back in 11th and 12th are Daryanani and Gladish. So this is definitely not really what either driver had in mind for this one. Both Barashi and Skula have gone back out onto the circuit, I should point out, for the Santalok squad. They've really struggled. Oh, sorry, no, for the Pelot squad, I do apologise. Santalok does have drivers in this category, but they are Lorenzo Castillo and Garrett Berry. Theodor Jensen is the 3rd of those, but of course he is out of this race. Right, Stucker's got ahead of Caranta. Stucker's got the move. There he is. Just worked his way through, so he's obviously done that just out of view of the cameras. But Kasper Stucker has found his move on Gilles Caranta, and he's now up to P4. There he is. So Kasper Stucker now into P4 ahead of Gilles Caranta, and that gives him a chance to go back after Enzo Tarvanichkul. But he's got 11.5 minutes to close up on the tie and put the Griffin Core team back into position again. More great chills as they work their way forward. Looks like there's been an issue for Garrett Berry and Lenny Reed. I think the Santalok driver has collided with the Sparco Pelot driver. So I think there could be a visit from the safety car again here potentially. Certainly Garrett Berry and Lenny Reid having an issue, and into the pits has come Preston Lambert. So Preston Lambert retiring his Drivex from the race. That is very unfortunate. So I'm afraid it's game over for Preston Lambert, but there's also been problems for Garrett Berry and Lenny Reid. I think they've collided with each other and dropped back. Safety car, safety car. So somewhere around the course, we're going to see Garrett Berry. Oh, there is the 18. So there indeed is Garrett Berry getting out of the Santa Lock, but I think Lenny Reid is also involved in that one in the Sparco below car. So he's out of the race, and I think that's down at the end of the back straight. So we need to figure out where Lenny Reid is as well, because that's the safety car triggered for the second time in the same race, which is unfortunate because we didn't have a single safety car period during our time at the Red Bull Ring. So certainly a big disappointment for the man involved in that one, Garrett Berry and Preston Lambert. Now, interestingly, Matej Gladish is in 11th position ahead of Kai Dadianani, and that was at the last timing loop. Now, question, has he been able to make that overtake before the safety car board came out? If he has, no problem. If he hasn't, that could end up being a penalty. But it looks to me as though he's perfectly okay. It's just the way that the timing screen pings at the sectors. I think he was into 11th place okay. So that puts him one step closer to scoring a point. He's got to get ahead of Francisco Macedo on the restart if he wants to do so. Well, that's where we think the safety car was required. And I'm looking around to try and see where Lenny Reid is. I can't see his car anywhere there, but he isn't running. So that now brings us down to, I think, 23 cars, because we're now down to retirements from Garrett Berry, Isaac Barashi, Zach Skula, Lenny Reid, Preston Lambert, Theodor Jensen, and Alex Abkasava. Although I think Barashi and Skula might still be actually circulating, but they were a long way back. So they may be about to move their way forward. So actually, I think we've got 25 runners left in this race. Oh, we're going to see a replay of the start. Now, this is the original start of the race. Hopefully, we're going to get to see the restart as well, because that's the important one, to see what happened there between Stucker and Carrasquedo on the initial restart, because Stucker left it so late to get underway. So there's the rather tame manoeuvres of the first lap, where the top five stayed where they were. Big dive on the inside from the MP, though. Now, hang on a minute. Mattia Kolnagi is running in front of Gilles Caranta. So Caranta is down to P6. Well, that's great news for the championship leader, Kolnagi making up another place. But for Caranta, he is down to P6 now. So that's not good news for the Red Bull Campos driver at all. I'm not sure how that's happened. We didn't see the overtaking move. I'll tell you, the replay I'd love to see is the replay of the restart, because that's where Stucker waited far too long and allowed Carrasquedo, Rivera, Tarvanichkul, and Caranta all to sweep past him. And with Kolnagi now up to 5th position, having got ahead of Caranta, there they are going through the picture now. It'll be fascinating to see if Kolnagi can then make the benefit on Stucker on the restart, because that would be a psychological hammer blow to the Polish driver, Kasper Stucker. He really needs to salvage a podium after the misery of dropping back to P5 on the restart. So it's going to be a fascinating one to see if Carrasquedo can extend the gap away from his countryman Ernesto Rivera. And then, of course, Enzo Tarvanichkul working the way forward there as well. Kasper Stucker, Mattia Kolnagi, and Gilles Caranta. Yeah, I think our camera there at turn 3 sadly froze, because we should have seen quite a few cars going through that particular part of the shot. Hopefully that'll be rectified fairly soon. Carrasquedo, Rivera, and Tarvanichkul. Then Kasper Stucker, P4. How did he get the move on Mattia Kolnagi? I've got a feeling that's going to be for the onboard that he uploads to YouTube later, rather than something that our cameras were able to identify. There's so many directions to look in EuroCup-3. That's the big difficulty, but a good advantage of having so many cars on the starting grid. So it's always going to be a little bit tricky. Now we're going to see a replay. This is of that restart. Now look at Stucker. He's trying desperately to hold his nerve. He's gone to the inside line, but thanks to the slipstream, he's too busy focusing on the Red Bull Juniors. Around the outside, there goes Carrasquedo, and there goes Rivera. Now watch around the outside. Tarvanichkul's going to get there, and Caranta's just going to think, right, well, there's enough grip around the outside. I can make that work as well. Devastating for Kasper Stucker on the restart. You just left it too long. You really need to be making the acceleration around this circuit on the restart at the top of the drop. You can't really afford to be accelerating at the foot of the crest, because that's when everybody's going to get the benefit. They can time it a split second quicker than you. And as we saw on that restart from Kasper Stucker, they'll make mincemeat of you. So big drama so far then here at Portimao, as we're going to have a sprint to the finish of about 4.5 minutes, I would think. So we've had 5 retirements from this race. Garrett Berry, Lenny Reed, who we haven't spotted yet, Preston Lambert, who parked his car in the garage, Theodor Jensen, who recovered it back to the pits after the first lap incident, and Alex Abkasaba, whose car was spun off at turn number 5, and that is what triggered the first safety car. The second safety car is triggered by the clash between Garrett Berry for Santalok and Lenny Reed for Sparko Palou, but I haven't really seen initially what happened there to Lenny Reed. We only know that he's out of the race. There were the two gorgeous looking LA cars of Emil and Linus Hellberg. They are continuing the tradition of racing in single-seater no matter how old you are. They are a good 15 to 20 years, depending on which one you speak to, older than any other driver in this field, but they wanted to go competitive single-seater racing, and there are limited options for drivers wanting to race in single-seaters past a certain age. Once you get past the F2 category, if you don't make it into IndyCar, you don't make it into Formula One, what other options are there for you? Euroboss is obviously one, but you've got to get your hands on an aging Formula One or aging single-seater car, and that's not so easy to source. So why not compete in EuroCup-3? So for Linus and Emil Hellberg, they get the excitement of racing at this competitive level, but they don't have to worry too much about getting their hands on a vintage Formula 2 car. The other option, of course, once you get past a certain age, is Super Formula, but again, very similar to Formula 2 in IndyCar in that there are not really many seats available. So for the Ally racing team that they operate, EuroCup-3 makes a lot of sense. They still get to scratch that racing bug in a single-seater, but the cost makes it particularly viable for them to do so, and they get to race in some amazing race circuits around the globe this year. So the Technicar mechanics keeping an eye on things. Technicar also running teams, of course, in the F4 Spanish Championship. So the field have not quite got everything tidied up, ready for the restart just yet. So that means we're going to have even longer out on the course. Can you hear the screech of the tyres from the safety car? That's what always baffles me about single-seater cars. When they're not operating at full temperature, they are looking really, really slow. But you've got to give the kudos to the safety car driver who is properly pushing it and really going as fast as that Mercedes safety car can go. But you're hearing the tyres squeal as the car goes past the pits because it is very, very tough to drive that safety car at full chat when all the other drivers, of course, are running at about half speed. So Jessica Lascado leads this race in front of Ernesto de Vera and Enzo Tarvanichkel, then Kasper Stucker, ahead of Mattia Colnaghi, Gilles Caranta and Valerio Rinicella. Then rounding up the top 10 are Andres Cardenas, James Igozzi and Francisca Macedo. Maciej Gladish is 1 place out of the points ahead of Kai Darianani. Yannis Stephen Haydens is 13th in front of Lorenzo Castillo, then Emo Fittipaldi, Luciano Morano, Oscar Wirtz, Edu Robinson, Alexandro Famolaro. Alcy Feldman is doing well in 20th place, the young Brazilian teenager. Christian Cantu, Emil Hellberg, Linus Hellberg, Isaac Barashi and Zach Skula. After the latter two, both had to make a trip to the pits. Garrett Berry, Lenny Reed, Preston Lambert, Theodor Jensen and Alex Abkasaba are all out of the race. Safety car in this lap. So we are going to have a short sprint to the finish, and I think it's only going to be 2 laps of racing. So it's very important indeed for Ernesto de Vera to take full advantage of the opportunity on this restart. We saw how Kasper Stucker got it so badly wrong on the first restart. On the second restart, Kadashkader's got to learn from that. If I were him, I'd be dropping the hammer as soon as you come out of the right-hand apex. You want to catch Rivera out. So the lights are going to go out on the safety car now. And so the 6th safety car will rejoin the pit lane. And it's all up to Jesse Kadashkado now. He gets to control the pace from this moment on. And so for him and the rest of the teams on the strategy, on the pit wall, they've got to work hard to tell their driver what to do. And for Jesse Kadashkado, this is where the race can be won or lost. If I'm Jesse Kadashkado, I would be hitting the throttle about now. But he's going to wait a little bit longer. just to keep the field a little more concertinated. Need to be looking at Jesse Carrasquedo really to see when the pace goes. It's going to be going any moment now, but again, lot of concertinaing up. This could be a very tricky restart for Jesse Carrasquedo. He's going to leave it long as well. But we saw that it didn't work for Kasper Stuka, so you've got to time this right. Again, if I'm Jesse Carrasquedo, I'm going about quarter past now. There he goes! And that's a better restart. Rivera has been caught out now. His teammate Enzo Tarmanичkul is going to have a run at him as they go up the straight, but they're both going to have the slipstream on Carrasquedo. It's not clear who's going to be winning this one. It's green on the restart, and Carrasquedo is swarming around trying to drop Rivera and Tarmanичkul, who could be battling with each other. Tarmanичkul pops out from the slipstream. He's going to try and get through on the inside of his team, and he has to bail out of it. Rivera still pushing Carrasquedo, who runs wide through turn one. So too does Tarmanичkul, and watch out for the hard charging third place man. It's Stuka. Welcome back to the podium, Kasper Stuka. Fantastic restart. He takes full advantage of Tarmanичkul running wide, and Caranta gets back in front of Kolnagi in the same breath. And now the leaders are properly squabbling. Carrasquedo trying to keep Rivera back, who almost gets level with him as they go down to the hairpin. Side by side between Caranta and Kolnagi has to bail out of the move. Caranta's got him back again. And side by side again, Rivera trying to go the long way round on Carrasquedo. He's got big kudos, big cojones to go through on the far side. Now he's going to try and get the switcheroo. He'll get a quicker run off the turn. They'll go side by side, but he's not quite level enough to hold that round the left side. Rivera showing Red Bull that he is just as big a fighter as anyone on this race circuit. He goes long again, trying to hold the grip round the far side, but Carrasquedo is ready for him. Time has run down to 0, so now it's 1 lap to go at the end of this one. Rivera again goes long. Carrasquedo makes him go round the outside line. Rivera trying his best, looking for his move on the inside line, but Stuka is there in third position. He could swamp past both of them if he times this right on the way down the main straight. Stuka is not out of the victory yet. They go through the final turn. And Rivera charging after Carrasquedo. Now I think Carrasquedo's got enough daylight to be fairly serene, but he's still got to try and break the toe of Rivera. Last lap, here we go, and Carrasquedo, Rivera and Stuka will be the 3 men battling for the victory. Caranta is in P4 now, in front of Kolnagi and Rinicella. So something has happened to Tarmanичkul. I'm not sure where he's gone, but he's down to 19th place now. So Tarmanичkul has clearly had a problem. We didn't quite see where he disappeared to. We were so busy focusing on Carrasquedo and Rivera, so it's very unfortunate indeed. And Oscar Wirtz has had a problem. Oscar Wirtz has not come through. So Oscar Wirtz is down to about 18th. Tarmanичkul is down to about 21st. I wonder if Tarmanичkul picked up a puncture when he ran wide there, you know. And that's not what Rivera wants to do. Don't run wide, you could pick up a puncture yourself. But try as he might, he just can't quite deal with Carrasquedo. He was willing to give it everything he had to go level with him, and Stuka has done a sensational job to get up to third position ahead of Tarmanичkul, who has now dropped all the way to 21st. Macedo is limping back to the pits. So Francesco Macedo had to come into the pits on the penultimate lap. And there is Igotzi, now been to 7th, ahead of Gladish, who is in 8th. Cardenas is 9th, and Steven Haydens for GRS is going to score the final point in P10. But Jesse Carrasquedo, all the pressure was on the Mexican to deliver. He was the one who romped ahead of Kasper Stuka on the first restart. He was the one who dealt with Ernesto Rivera on the second restart. And now he'll drop down the hill. The man is full of confidence. FIA Formula 3 has definitely rejuvenated the Mexican. And as he comes out of the final turn for Griffin Core, the Mexican, Jesse Carrasquedo, is going to get the first win of the weekend here in Portimao. Brilliant from Jesse Carrasquedo. Vencedore. Vamos, Jesse. Brilliant stuff from Carrasquedo. And it's a Mexican 1-2 as Ernesto Rivera is second for Campos. And he also wins the rookie contest. It is a fantastic day to be Mexican if you're a EuroCup-3 fan. Both your boys have delivered. Carrasquedo wins overall. Rivera wins the rookie race ahead of Stuka, Caranta, Kolnagi, Rinicella, Igotzi, Gladish, Cardenas and Steven Haydens. What a sensational opening race. We may have had a couple of safety car interruptions, but both of them gave us a restart to be proud of. Full action and full drama all the way in the opening race of the weekend in EuroCup-3. And we are just getting started because we've still got More races to come this weekend. We've got a short sprint this afternoon in EUROCUP-3 and the proper full race tomorrow as well. And don't forget that we also have 3 epic F4 Spanish Championship races this weekend. And their championship fight is already going full guns blazing. So it's all pretty exciting stuff for Jesse Cadasquedo. That is the right way to win a race, to put yourself back on the front row of the grid after the misery of the Red Bull Ring, and then to come through and get a victory like that. Mattia Kolnagi got the victory in race 1 of the Red Bull Ring. Maciej Gladish got the job done in race 2 at the Red Bull Ring. And then here, Griffincourt have triumphed with Jesse Cadasquedo in race 1 at Portimao. 3 different races, 3 different race winners. What a start to the EuroCup-3 2025 campaign. Absolutely open season. And so Jesse Cadasquedo will trundle down pit lane. He took a little bit of grass there to add a little bit more to the tyres. But this is going to be a very happy man. After the Red Bull Ring, he would have been stressed to the max. Is this not going to work out for me after all? After all the hard work we put in last year and in the off-season, are we going to be miserable when we go to Portimao? The answer is no. Jesse Cadasquedo. Fabulous, fabulous effort from the Griffincourt driver. He gets out of the car and he will go straight to the team. Jesse Cadasquedo wins when he needed to. Excellent start for Campos this weekend. After the MP domination streak in the Red Bull Ring, it's great for Campos to bounce back here at Portimao with the Griffincourt satellite squad man, Jesse Cadasquedo of Mexico. Move over, Sergio Perez. There's a new Mexican in town. Jesse Cadasquedo led his countrymen home. Red Bull youngster Ernesto Rivera can be celebrated for 2nd place as well. And the pole returned to the podium. Kasper Stucker, damaged imitation, scoring big points over Mattia Kolnagi and Maciej Gladish to keep this title fight very much a 3-man show. But I think it's a 4-man show now, because Jesse Cadasquedo has just scored big when it was absolutely mandatory to. Excellent effort from JC. So he will have a chat to our pit reporter, Alex Garcia, down in pit road. But Jesse Cadasquedo must be so relieved after the opening in Austria. He must have felt, well, what's going to be the point of carrying on in this if we can't get our pace back? He got it back in qualifying 1. And so Griffincourt and the Campos Racing team bounces back after MP-dominated proceedings in the Red Bull Ring. On the return visit to Portugal, it's a Campos swamp of the podium. The Griffincourt satellite drivers, Cadasquedo and Stucker, split by the man in your inset to the left of your picture, Ernesto Rivera, the other Mexican on the podium. Fabulous start to the weekend for him as he grabs the rookie victory. But there is Jesse Cadasquedo, and he'll have a chat with Alex Garcia.
Let's wait for the congratulations for Jesse. Jesse, we talked last weekend in Barcelona.
Yes.
And I know that was a difficult weekend as a feeder series from Formula 1, supporting Formula 1. But I'm sure you learned something, because you come back here and you nail it from the beginning.
Yeah, for sure. It was a tough weekend. We had to learn the car. But yeah, it gave us a lot of experience, especially to be quick since the first laps. That is what F3 gives you. So yeah, just super happy to be, you know, you fall to the bottom, then you come back up. So hopefully we keep this momentum, and let's see for the next races, but super happy.
And I have to ask you about the 2 key moments of the race. What was that double overtake at the end of the straight? How did you manage that? How did you see that hole?
I just said, fuck it. I just braked as late as I could, and just, if we crash, we crash, but I'm gonna brake as late as I can, you know, so. And that was it came out good, so yeah.
As Ayrton Senna used to say, if you do not go for a space, for a gap,
you're not before
the race, you're not a racing driver, but you are. You did not give that gap to Ernesto in the end, because he pushed you as hard as he could as well.
Yeah, we were tough battle to fight with him. He's quick, so yeah, that safety car sucked a bit, you know, because we already had a big gap. So, but we managed to keep it, you know.
Good job, Jesse. Congratulations, enjoy the victory, and good luck for the next one, because 2 today.
Yeah, 2 today, yes. Thank you.
Congratulations. So that was our race winner for race 1 this weekend, Jesse Carrasquillo. And as he was saying, they were discussing the key points of the Ayrton Senna school of driving. And that is, if you no longer go for a gap that exists, you're not a racing driver. So he did, and he took it.
Very true, Alex. Thank you very much indeed. That's it for the first race of the day here at Portimao. We'll show you the pictures from the highlights. Gracias, Alex. I know we've got some F4 Spanish Championship racing to cover next, so I'll leave you to crack on and open the F4 Spanish broadcast in Spanish. Thank you, Alex. Well, what a battle the first race of the weekend has given us in EUROCUP-3. And now we have 3 very different winners. Mattia Colnaghi and Maciej Gladic over in the Red Bull Ring. But here in Portimao, Jesse Carrasquillo has opened the scoreline. Apologies for a couple of his comments after the race if you were offended. But you were not offended by his driving, I'm sure. Just like Ayrton Senna, if you don't go for a gap that exists, you're not a racing driver. The top racing driver in race 1 was Jesse Carrasquillo. You'll see the pictures from the podium on our social media pages. Just follow EUROCUP-3 on Instagram, Facebook, and all the rest of it. We'll be back for the shorter sprint race later this afternoon. Bye for now.